Hello, and welcome to our presentation on high-accuracy water asset data collection. My name is Benjamin Griffith, and I'm a GIS project manager at TexianGeo. Joining me for this presentation will be Benjamin Rux, who is the GIS crew leader at Rocket Special Utility District. I want to first talk to you a little bit about the issues that these small water companies are facing today. A lot of these water companies are behind in technology and rely on the knowledge of their field crew to locate assets out in the field. The issue with this is that we often find there's only one or two individuals in the whole organization that know the majority of the water system and where most of the assets lie. So we often see that these individuals are getting calls all day long from other members of the organization to help locate assets that were once installed by the organization, but the knowledge hasn't been passed down or hasn't been distributed throughout the organization. Today we'll be talking about Rocket Special Utility District. Rocket is located just south of Dallas-Fort Worth in Waxahachie, Texas, and services about 12,000 customers in its 570 miles of distribution lines. Rocket is a rural part of Texas, but is quickly becoming more and more developed with all the construction along I-35. Rocket had previously had some CAD maps that were drawn of their system, and while the CAD drawings worked great for a lot of different aspects of design and future planning, in the real world, or when you zoomed in and really went out in the field and tried to look at where these things were located, it was pretty obvious that they're pretty far off. The reason for this is that CAD isn't always tied to a geographic location. They can sometimes be just drawn out in space. So this is to be expected. And like I said, it's great for many different aspects, but as far as knowing where your assets are truly located on the ground, this just doesn't cut it. And so you can actually see in this next slide here, the orange and green lines, those are the CAD lines that were brought in. And these squares with the two dots and the circle with the yellow symbol, and that's a valve there. That's where these assets truly lie. And if you look at those symbols, those assets look like they lie closer to where you might expect a meter to fall or a valve at that intersection right there. But as for the rest of these assets that are showing up from the CAD data, they look pretty far off. Some of them are on top of roofs and in the middle of houses. We know that's just not how these utilities are laid out. So for this data collection project, we used the Eos GNSS high accuracy receiver, and a crew of 2 were able to collect over 4,000 assets with centimeter accuracy in about 7 months. So this crew used ATVs in most locations to get around. Like I said, this is a more rural part of Texas, and so there's a lot of back roads that are just easier to get around and travel up and down on an ATV. And it also allows you to keep your GNSS receiver connected to the satellites by not putting it inside the cab of a truck to drive down half a mile down the road to collect your next point. So that makes it more efficient. Also, they're using some fan cases on their iPads to keep them cool and keep them running. That's one of the biggest issues here in the Texas heat, is keeping your tablets or other devices cool enough to keep going. All the other equipment can take a beating, but those are the things that'll overheat first. So now we're going to go to Q&A session with Benjamin Rux. Benjamin is the GIS crew leader out at Rocket Special Utility District. He is one of the 2 people that went out and collected over 4,000 assets in less than 7 months. And keep in mind that he was actually doing other things and maintaining other responsibilities while also collecting these points. So some days he was off doing other things. Some days weather didn't permit him to get out there and collect points. And still he was able to learn how to do this whole process and collect that many points in that shorter time. He had no GIS experience previous to this, and I feel that he really took to it. So let's hear what he has to say about this process. Okay, Ben, to get started, what kind of mapping of assets, if any, was Rocket doing previous to this project?
Well, previously we were just using a store-bought GPS unit, and we had one guy going out. He was looking at the paper map that we have, and he would record a valve, and he was doing flush hydrants and valves. He wasn't doing meters or fire hydrants. And he would, when the GPS unit was full of information, he would take it back to the shop and download it onto to a computer, and the information just kind of stayed there. I mean, that was probably 4 years ago, maybe even longer, and we never really used it. And then we were changing all our meters out to these new Badger E-Series water meters, and the contractor that was changing the meters out, they would GPS where the meter was, and so that gave a location for the water meters. And somehow the women would they can pull it up on the beacon eye on water, and it'll pull up a GPS coordinate, and it'll show where the water meter is. And we had a independent contractor that he recorded all the fire hydrants, but I'm not real sure about where that information is and how far that got.
What is the main issue when you're trying to locate or work on a specific asset out in the field?
Not knowing where the water meters are, not knowing where the valves are. We're kind of a rural district. We have some subdivisions, but we're more rural than we are subdivisions, and some of the valves are miles apart, and some of the water meters are set in different places where they're not in front of the house all the time, it's kind of spread out. And without having the GIS or GPS, it kind of makes it hard. You got to go on memory where you remember it being, or just experience, knowing where everything is, and being knowledgeable of the system.
Okay, and to that point, could someone who was hired last month locate most of the assets in the system?
No, it takes at least a year to get familiar with our system because we're so spread out.
Right.
I mean, you're just not going to walk in and know where everything is. And we have the paper maps and everything, but I mean, it takes seeing your eyes seeing it to remember where it's going to be, the next time you need it.
How much time do you think a digital map of Rocket's water system will save the company?
When it'll be completed, when we collect all the assets. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you should be able to pull it up on an iPad or your phone, and I mean, you should be able to see where everything is accurately. And I think it would save a lot of time, because a lot of time guys are trying to find a water meter or a water valve because we have a water main break. And if they look at the map and they can't find it, then they have to make several phone calls to me or somebody else to ask where it's at, directions on how to find it and everything. So I think if this information, if it's available to them, it'll save a lot of time.
While creating this water system map for Rocket, have you come across any assets that you've never seen before?
Yes, I have seen a lot of water meters and valves. I've been here 16 years that I didn't know that was there, or didn't know that they existed.
Right. And that's during your time collecting data, or just over time you found?
During my time collecting data.
Right.
Especially the water meters. There's a lot of water meters that I've never seen before.
Okay, and related to that last question, have you come across any assets in the field that weren't recorded in your route book or other resources?
Yes, there's been a couple of water meters that we didn't know that existed. I mean, I'm sure somebody did at some point, but they're no longer employed here, so, or they forgot about it over time or something of that nature. But
okay, great. Ben, if you don't mind, could you speak a little bit about your experience using Collector?
Well, at first it was kind of hard for me to understand. I wasn't familiar with it, and it took some trials and errors to finally figure it out. But once I finally figured it out, and we figured out how to get better signal and how to keep the points, the assets within the range that we wanted them to be in, it was pretty easy. I got more familiar with the software on how to go back and see what range it was in and everything. And it's just something new to me that I've never done before. It's pretty easy once you understand it all.
Right. I actually think you were able to learn Collector pretty quickly and get out there and collect over 4,000 points in 7 months while also maintaining other responsibilities in your company. I think that's pretty impressive. Could you talk a little bit about your workflow in the field?
Well, we have a meter route book when we used to hand read the meters. It's kind of like a mail route. You follow it, and it takes you, around all the roads and everything. And that meter route book gives you the meter number and the address and the endpoint number. And we usually work in a team when we're out in the rural areas. We collect valves, hydrants, and flush hydrants and meters with 2 guys. And when we're in a subdivision, we split up because it's a little easier, and there's more valves and fire hydrants in a subdivision than there is on rural route. And we just follow that route book, and we get to the address, we find the meter, we collect the asset, we put the meter number in and the address in the street. And that's basically what we do. We ride on ATVs most of the time when the weather permits us to. It's a little easier getting in and out. You're kind of out of the way from vehicles. You can park on the side of the road more. And it also keeps the unit where you're not in the truck where it doesn't lose signal. Because sometimes we're pretty far out in the country, and cell phone service isn't that great. And we kind of lose signal a lot. And every asset we collect, we paint a dot. Well, for meters, we'll paint a blue dot on the meter box. That way we know we've been there in case we come back to it, so we don't collect it twice. And on fire hydrants and valves, we do the same thing. Right. And flush hydrants. And we kind of look back at the map to be sure we get all the valves and the hydrants. But basically, the meters, if it's going to be in that route book, and sometimes it's not, we'll come across something that's not in the route book. It'll be an empty box, so it won't have a meter in it. But we still collect it and try to get the best address we can for it. And
okay, yeah, I think that was
like a pressure plane. Like we usually try to stay in that pressure plane, and that way we can stay more organized and be sure that we get everything, be sure we collect everything.
I think that was great to hear directly from Benjamin Rux on how this experience has been for someone who is new to GIS and had never done it before. So the great thing about digital water maps is it allows your entire organization to stay on the same page as far as what assets are currently located in your water system. So whether you're a new field crew hire or you're a office worker working on a desktop computer, you'll be able to access the same information and see where all these assets are located within the water system. And this enables your organization to be more efficient on locating these assets. And on top of that, it allows you to free up your water system experts to be doing those other tasks that they would normally be doing instead of answering calls to help people within your organization locate these assets. Because like I've mentioned, these water systems have put in these assets at one point, and we should know where all of their assets lie within their system. If we don't, then we're wasting time looking for things that we once knew where they were located. So for this project, we decided to deploy an Esri solution. These solutions are a great way to quickly deploy multiple maps with pre-configured layers to your ArcGIS online organization. So these solutions can be accessed through ArcGIS Pro, and you can deploy these solutions directly to your ArcGIS online account. And basically, these are pre-packaged layers and maps that can pretty quickly be uploaded, and you'll be able to use them on ArcGIS for your collector with very little configuration. And that means that you can get out in the field and start collecting your assets more quickly and you don't have to spend so much time building out your own custom maps when this nice solution is already available for you. So in this particular case, and in Rocket's case, we decided to go with the Water Distribution System Foundation solution because it has a similar schema to the utility network for enterprise, and that's something that Rocket is looking to do further down the road. So for this project, we loaded Collector for ArcGIS onto a couple of iPads and gave them to the field crew to go out in the field and start collecting points directly into the solution that we deployed on the last slide. We used the Eos GNSS receivers to provide us with high accuracy location data for this project. These are 5 constellation receivers that connect to GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, Beidou, and QZSS. And what that means to you is it has a really strong signal, and it's talking to about 35 satellites now in this latest update. So it's able to maintain a strong signal even underneath the canopy of a tree. We see great results with those as well. So these receivers Bluetooth to your device, and they actually come with an app that you install on your device that feeds the location data into Collector. So in this case, we used an RTK Aero Gold. This receiver has a horizontal accuracy of 1 to 3 centimeters and a vertical accuracy of 2 to 6 centimeters. And that is, of course, with RTK. And for this project, we actually have an Aero Gold RTK base station set up at the Rocket headquarters. So that provides us with survey grade accuracy throughout their service area. So it makes it really easy to collect data for many years to come. These RTK base stations provide correction data to rovers out in the field. One RTK base station has a radius of about 30 miles, and within that 30-mile radius, you'll be able to collect centimeter accurate points. Once you get out beyond that 30 miles, you start to lose some accuracy. But we've been able to connect to some base stations up to 180 miles away, which is pretty impressive. You're able to connect an unlimited amount of units to one base station. So you can have many different field crews working off the same base station. So here's just a simple diagram on how RTK base stations work. On the right of the diagram, you see a rover out in the field with a cellular enabled device, whether that's a tablet or a phone. And on the left of the screen, you see a base station. So the satellites up above are beaming signals down to the rover, and at the same time sending signals to the base station. And the base station takes the RTK corrections and sends them through the internet to your cellular enabled device. So that's why you need an internet connection out in the field. With these RTK corrections, your rover is then able to get down to 1 to 3 centimeter accuracy and get that high accuracy data that you're looking for. So I mentioned for this project that Rocket purchased their own base station. That just makes sense for companies that are looking to collect data for years to come. But for shorter term projects, there's also RTK correction subscription services. And so these are companies that have many different base stations across the US, and you pay for access to the closest base station to you. These are usually state by state, but that is another option for RTK corrections. Thank you for attending this session on high accuracy water asset data collection. That is all we have time for today, but if you'd like some more information on the content of these slides, please follow the links below and you can get some more info on the products and services mentioned in this presentation. Thank you.